Got it? Very good. Good morning. How's everyone? Keep getting your food and coffee, and everybody in the hall, come on in, join us. We're going to get started this morning. Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of CCA's Mobile Carrier Show. I'd also like to welcome those of you joining us by webcast. Thanks to our broadcast partner, RCR Wireless. Thank you, and welcome to you. I hope we had a chance to attend one or more of yesterday's sessions. Hopefully you spent plenty of time in the exhibit hall. I hope you enjoyed the Viva Las Vegas party last night, thanks to our friends at TNS. And I think it was a great networking event, so thank you, TNS. I was told many years ago, first trip to Vegas, that you don't have late nights in Vegas, you just have early mornings. So for those of you who may have had late night, early morning, I hope you got some strong coffee back there. We do have, Bill, we do have coffee available for you, strong, and some breakfast, obviously. So we'd like to thank Bright Star for the breakfast this morning. So our sponsors, we thank them so very much. And I'll also recognize the pinnacle sponsors of our event, which is Ericsson, Huawei, Interop Technologies, Nokia, Sprint, T-Mobile, TNS, and ZTE. Thank you for your support. And now for this morning's program. Yes, give them a thank you. This would not be possible without them. So we have some great speakers lined up, but first, not such a great speaker, but I'd like to briefly highlight a few of the biggest policy issues that CCA is working on with our members in Washington, D.C. So first, let me start with the Mobility Fund 2. Anyone who lives in or has traveled through rural America knows that many areas still have little or no access to mobile broadband services. And in this day and age, that's simply not acceptable. The job is not done. All consumers, no matter where they live, work, or travel, should have access to a robust mobile service. And one of the top issues standing in between us and, quite frankly, bringing high-speed service to all Americans is how the FCC will proceed with the Mobility 2 Fund. As a first step, and perhaps most importantly, the FCC must have good, accurate data to identify areas that are eligible for Mobile 2 funding. As I said in testimony on Capitol Hill just 2 weeks ago, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. The FCC recently released an initial map of areas eligible for Phase 2 support, but the map unfortunately missed the mark, and it missed the mark by a long shot. The map incorrectly identifies many areas as having coverage when in reality, they do not. This is extremely concerning. Using bad data will result in many unserved and underserved areas not being eligible for Mobility Fund 2 support. In fact, the map is so flawed that a challenge process may not even be robust enough to correct the problem. And this is important. I'd like everyone to know, if there is no challenge to those areas where there is claimed service, then those areas will not be eligible for USF for the next decade. That's $4.53 billion that will not be eligible if no one challenges the map. Now, ACC members were certainly not the only ones that noticed this. Several members of Congress have expressed their displeasure with the map, and a bipartisan group of senators also sent a letter to the Commission expressing their concerns. CCA will continue to work with Congress and the FCC to ensure reliable, accurate data is used to determine which areas are eligible for MF2 support. This is a critical issue, and certainly especially critical for smaller carriers. And I'd like to briefly note a new and very concerning issue has just arisen. As many of you may know, the FCC's NPRM, Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, to prohibit access to U.S. funding to purchase equipment from particular foreign manufacturers or service providers. We are all concerned. We are concerned about our national security, and we strongly support securing our nation's networks. And I must say that we strongly support using every means to work with the FCC, the White House, the Congress, the intelligence communities, to make sure that we address and support a comprehensive solution that achieves the end result that we desire. Now, another very important issue is infrastructure. Infrastructure is not only the backbone of wireless networks, but is also the key to success for the 5G IoT world. And CCA members are readily willing to enhance and build out their networks, but the current maze of regulatory red tape places significant burdens on carriers, especially smaller carriers with limited financial and limited personnel capability and resources. I think it's pretty clear that if America is to increase its productivity and efficiency, then all of America, including rural areas, must have access to mobile broadband services. And the infrastructure must be in place to make that possible. But there is some good news here. The administration and the FCC both seem to agree on the importance of streamlining infrastructure policies. FCC Commissioner Carr was charged as lead at the FCC on streamlining the infrastructure siting process. He recently met with CCA member Shintel in rural Virginia, and CCA was pleased to participate in that as well. A more streamlined deployment process will allow competitive carriers to deploy critical mobile broadband services in areas that are still unserved or underserved. And on Thursday last week, during its open meeting, the FCC adopted CCA's backed recommendations. It was a big step for rural America. On Capitol Hill, there's been a lot of activity. Congress has introduced a plethora of bills and has held numerous hearings on infrastructure, and CCA was there at the table. We testified 3 times in the last 3 weeks on this important issue to our members. But while there has been some good progress, there's still more work to be done. The third big issue I'd like to address is spectrum. I would like to highlight 3 specific areas. First, 600 megahertz spectrum. Largely because of the Commission used CCA's proposed partial economic areas, many carriers were able to participate and win the valuable 600 megahertz spectrum in the historic incentive auction. In fact, 80% of auction winners were CCA members. As we moved into the repacking process, the third and final phase of the incentive auction, it is absolutely critical for the transition to happen as quickly as possible. Competitive carriers greatly depend on a smooth and timely repack process and should not have to wait longer than necessary to gain access to purchased spectrum, especially in rural areas where spectrum deployment could actually occur more rapidly. CCA is working diligently with the FCC to ensure the repacking process adheres to the congressionally mandated 39-month time frame, which will ultimately benefit consumers and the economy, and we'll continue to work to make this happen. Next, 3.5. As we work towards the integration of 600 megahertz spectrum, we also are closely monitoring policies surrounding other valuable bands, including the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum. 3.5 spectrum provides a real opportunity to bring mobile broadband services not only to urban and suburban America, but also provides a viable solution for rural America. And it's critical that both small and large carriers have access to the spectrum. We're working to address carrier members' needs for this spectrum, and including different size auction blocks for urban versus rural areas. CCA is exploring the possibilities and will continue to track progress and push for viable solutions. The third and final spectrum area I would like to touch on is millimeter wave spectrum. Millimeter wave offers tremendous opportunities for rural, regional, and nationwide carriers as they begin to delve into the 5G IoT world. The FCC must ensure spectrum is utilized in a way that promotes competition and innovation while protecting those that already have deployed services. The CCA is actively encouraging the FCC to deny pending transactions, including Verizon Straight Path and AT&T Fiber Tower. These transactions hand 2 of the largest carriers in the nation large chunks of valuable spectrum. Instead of approving the transactions, the FCC and the Commission should take action to auction the millimeter wave spectrum. Anything less is, I believe, a disservice to the American taxpayer. So we're very involved in this issue, and we'll keep on top of it, and we'll hopefully update you on progress. MF2, Mobility Fund 2, infrastructure, spectrum are certainly important issues for CCA members, but are not the only issues we're following. But in the interest of time, I will close here. But rest assured, we are working to shape a better and more competitive environment for our members and help close the digital divide in rural America. Now I'd like to turn to this morning's keynote speakers. And first up, I am very pleased to welcome FCC Commissioner Mignon Clyburn.